Thank you, good evening. I appreciate all of you being here tonight. I'm going to throw a bunch of facts and figures at you in a few minutes, but before we get to that, I want you all to think for just a minute about a natural place in California that you have enjoyed visiting with your family, with your friends, maybe alone. It might be Folsom Lake, the American River. Maybe you like going up to Tahoe, maybe down to Yosemite or over to the coast, Big Sur, the redwoods over in Marin County. Maybe you like going up to Mount Shasta. We have so many beautiful places in California. Now, think about how those places may have changed in your lifetime if you've been there many times. And think about whether your children will be able to enjoy those places in the same way, to make memories with the people that they love, like we have made memories with those that we love. It's not hard to imagine this because it's only a few years ago the Tahoe was on fire, Napa Valley wine country was on fire, Yosemite was on fire. We haven't been able to go out when it's been smoky or too hot. The first 2 weeks of July, I didn't even want to go outside my house. It's like, oh my God, 100 days or 100 degrees for 14 days in a row. I'm like, oh, yeah. I got involved in this because I thought my kids are going to inherit a state that is vastly different than the one I have known and loved. And it's going to impact their quality of life. Because they're going to have to think about it. Well, let's see, can I go down to Yosemite? Is it going to be too smoky? Is it going to be on fire? Lake Shasta, Lake Folsom. We remember just a few years ago when there were boats that were moored there, sitting on dry land. That's why I'm here. Because we have a choice. If we want this to continue to get worse, or if we want to preserve this for our kids and give them the quality of life that we have enjoyed. So I decided I don't have the solution, but I could be part of the solution. With that, that's what we're going to talk about tonight. What's happening in our state, what has happened, what could happen if we don't do anything, and what we can do about it. So first, let me tell you a little bit. Here's my battery. Here we go. Let's try this. Okay, Citizens Climate Lobby. We are a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that seeks to create the political will for a livable future. We have the solutions for this problem. What we're lacking right now is the political will. There we go. Okay, I'm not very good with the clicker. Why do we do this? The last 10 years have been the hottest 10 years on record. This is globally. Not necessarily in this area, in our state, in the United States, but globally around the world, the last 10 years have been the hottest. Last year was the hottest year on record. Unfortunately, this year is starting off even worse. The orange line, well, it looks kind of yellow here. On this is 2023. The reddish one is 2024. So already in 2024, we broke the all-time hottest day ever this year. It broke the record from last year. As soon as we broke the record from last year, we broke the record the next day. And then by the end of the week, the new hottest temperature ever was the third hottest temperature ever. This year, 1,200 people in Mecca on the Hajj pilgrimage died from extreme heat. Iran right now is having such hot temperatures, they're hitting 120 degrees Fahrenheit at 2,300 feet of elevation. My cousin was just visiting from Japan last month in Tokyo. 120 people died in 1 month in one city of heat-related causes. It's not going well so far. 97% of the Great Barrier Reef, the northern part of it right now, has died this year from temperatures that are the hottest in 400 years in the ocean. And California, we're not escaping any of this. This July was the hottest ever in California. And again, the record was just set a couple years ago. We know that that period that we just lived through, the last part of June, the early part of July, was really hot around here. The hottest 20 days in Sacramento's history. I'd like to say that it's going to get better, but it's not. Not unless we do something. Now this is a chart from the Placer County Sustainability Plan. They are not a hotbed of liberal snowflakes. They did adopt this sustainability plan, which shows here the projections for Placer County. Now, you can tell here that each of the cities has their own extreme heat threshold. But like Granite Bay, close to me, I'm in Rockland, the extreme heat threshold of 104.6, we've averaged about 4.3 days a year historically with that kind of heat. By the end of the century, if we don't do anything, it could be 53 days a year, close to 2 months a year. So who wants to go outside in the summer when it's that hot? And we're not talking of 53 days where it's going to be 104.6. We're talking of days where it's going to be over 104.6, perhaps significantly over. Like we were just hitting 111, 110, 113. The projection for the end of this century, if we do nothing, is that this area will have at least 1 day a year of temperatures over 125 degrees Fahrenheit. And a few years ago, if I had said that, you would have been like, no, that's not going to happen. British Columbia hit 121 degrees, 5 years ago? Last year, we had multiple cities across the United States hitting a heat index that feels like temperature of 120 degrees. I have friends in Kansas. Lawrence, Kansas hit a heat index, that's the temperature plus humidity, of 134 degrees Fahrenheit last summer. That's where we're going. Unless we change. But let's assume that we don't. If it's that hot, what's going to happen? Guess what? We're not going to have much snowpack. In Placer County, this is again from the Placer County Sustainability Plan. Those dark blue and green areas, that's snow. So like the darkest area, that's snow more than 30 inches. This is from 1994 to 2013. Over here, you'll see that these light areas, by the end of this century, somewhere between 2070 and 2099, 5 to 10 inches is the lightest green color. That's how much snow is projected in the Sierras by the end of the Sierra, or the century, if we do nothing. And snow isn't just good for sledding and skiing and snowshoeing. That's where our water comes from. Now, we also know as things are hotter, we can end up with fire. And there is a direct correlation between heat and fire, as you can see from this chart. It just makes sense. When things are hotter and drier, it's going to be easier to burn. This year, we're already having a very bad fire year. Last night when I looked, the Park Fire is currently the 4th largest fire at 429,000 acres burned. 30,000 more, it'll be the 3rd largest fire. If you go to the CAL FIRE website and you look at their top 20 largest wildfires in the history of our state, all but one have happened since the year 2000. And just a few years ago, you could have looked at that list, and there were some from, I don't know, the 1990s, the 1980s, but not anymore. They've all happened in the last 24 years, except for one of them was like 1932, something like that. Now, a lot of people will say, oh, that's just bad forest management. That is one thing. We have done a lot of things, we haven't had controlled burns. We chop down our old growth forest and regrow tree plantations, which that's not really the same as a forest. But in 2018, the 4th National Climate Assessment came out, and one of the parts in there noted that the area in the western US has doubled in burn area due to climate change. And they say that's even more, it's more closely related to climate factors than to fire suppression, local fire management, or other non-climate factors. They do look at the forest management, and they're still telling us it's climate change. And that's because we know how hot it's getting. And you saw the graph that shows the correlation between high temperatures and fire. It dries everything out, then a lot of the trees will die. We've had a lot of trees in the Sierras that during the drought dried out, were attacked by bark beetles, then they died, and that's just kindling for the fires. So there's a lot of things going on. And in Placer County, again, this is from the Placer County Sustainability Plan. Typically, we've had less than 50 acres through most of Placer County that is burned. By the end of the century, we could have areas where there's more than 200 acres burning. The other thing about climate change, my favorite climate scientist, Catherine Hayhoe, she says we shouldn't call it global warming, we should call it global weirding, and she did come up with that before the 2024 election. But because the planet is warming, but the planet's reaction to that is to make things weird. Like we go from extreme drought to extreme flooding. And it's not only just an issue of how much we're enjoying life and whether we're being flooded or dealing with wildfire smoke, it's also an economic issue for our state and the country. Heat waves cost California $7.7 billion. And the economic losses from flooding in the last 2 years is estimated to exceed $15 billion. It's expensive. Okay, that's the bad part. I'm all done with that. Everybody take a break, breathe deeply. Okay. Now, this is the good part, okay? You lived through all of that. Now I'm going to tell you what we can do. Here's the good news. We have the solutions. The International Energy Agency has determined that the entire world has the technology we need to reduce emissions 50% by 2030, and then eventually get to net zero at 2050. But our goal right now, 50% by 2030, we have the technology we need. We absolutely have it. People may not love EVs or solar or wind or whatever, but we know what we need to do. We just need to do it. So, This is the good news. When we get to net zero, the heating is going to level off in just a few years. It's not going to go backwards. We are not going to undo what we have done, but in 3 to 5 years, it's going to level off. Then, when we get to net zero, mostly because methane does not stay in the air as long as carbon, but it has a much more significant impact. It lasts about 30 years in the atmosphere. So within about 30 years, after we get to net zero, after we stop putting methane into the atmosphere, 30 years, we can get rid of about half the carbon or carbon equivalents we've put into the atmosphere. That's a good thing. We will stop warming at that point. A lot of the other effects are not going to go away. The ice is going to continue to melt. Sea levels are going to continue to rise. We can't stop that because the carbon is still going to be there. Unless we discover new technologies, which is always possible, right? But we got to get to net zero first. So, how do we get there? Well, you guys will be very happy to know that this administration doesn't get nearly enough credit for it, but they passed the most impressive climate legislation ever in the United States in 2022. And that was the Inflation Reduction Act. The Inflation Reduction Act can lower U.S. emissions 40% below 2005 levels. Remember, our goal is 50%. This is going to get us very close to where we need to be if it's fully implemented and not undone by, you know, he who shall not be named. But that's not going to happen. So, before the IRA was passed, we were on track for about 27% reduction in our greenhouse gas emissions. The IRA will get us about 40%, perhaps a little more, perhaps a little less. Our Paris goal target, of course, is 50%. So we still have a ways to go, but this is a really, really good start. To show you just how much this has made a difference, you can see here these little bit of expenditures the U.S. government did for climate between 1990 and 2017 are completely dwarfed by the IRA, the CHIPS Act, and the bipartisan infrastructure law. It's actually the three of those together that have put a lot more money into climate action in the United States. And as I said, this administration doesn't get enough credit for this, but look at that. More than triple what we were spending before. Now, you can be a part of this solution. Because in order for the Inflation Reduction Act and all those other things to get us to where we need to be, we all need to take advantage of the IRA, and we all need to do a little bit of our part. The average American carbon footprint, and I hate to use the word carbon footprint because it was actually coined by one of the oil companies to make us all feel guilty, but you can see food is 14%, spending is 26%, home energy and transportation together is 60%. So I like to tell people 3 things. Do something personal, do something local, do something with a national or international impact. And I'll tell you why as we go through this. So for personal things, this is stuff like buy less stuff. Waste less stuff. If food waste were a country, it would be the 3rd largest emitter of greenhouse gases behind China and the United States. Fortunately, California has recently passed a composting law So most of the food in our state now is going to be composted, and in this area, we usually don't have to separate it out. Our garbage company does that. But if you want to compost at home, put it back into the soil, that's a good thing to do. Ditch single-use anything and everything. Ziploc bags. If you really want a bag, they now make the silicone ones that you can use. Send your grandkids to school with a sandwich box instead of a bag. Especially because plastics, 99.9% of them right now are based on fossil fuels, so they're bad in multiple ways. The third one, I know a lot of people don't want to hear this, eat less beef, it's very controversial. However, I'm going to tell you a really good statistic. Scientists say that if we were to reduce global beef consumption by just 50%, we could pretty much end deforestation. That is a good thing because we need trees to absorb carbon, and they're good for biodiversity. So if you don't want to get rid of beef, try to eat less. Also, regenerative agriculture. There's a lot of good things. Industrialized agriculture is causing a lot of the problems. There's a big difference between buying beef from some local farmer here in Lincoln that's actually raising the cow on their land and buying a burger from McDonald's because they're the ones chopping down the Amazon rainforest. So you have options. And the fourth one, go electric. This is where the Inflation Reduction Act comes in. And we'll get to that here. So the IRA offers rebates and tax credits for people to replace their appliances and vehicles with high efficiency electric alternatives. California is going to be, we think, the second state to actually have the upfront rebates. The tax credits are available now. The rebates probably are going to be available before the end of the year, maybe not before the election. But you can get induction stove, which heats 20% faster than gas, does not leak any horrible gases into your home, and when you turn it off, it's cool. You don't have to worry about your pets and your grandkids getting burned on it. Heat pumps and heat pump water heaters. I just got a heat pump water heater and I absolutely love it. It's so cool looking. And they are much more efficient than gas, and the tax credits and rebates can help you afford it and pay for the installation. So there are a lot of things in here, rooftop solar, EVs. All of these things will help us get off the fossil fuels that are causing the bad stuff that I talked about in the first part of this speech. You can go and see how much you personally can save because it's based on your income compared to the average median income in this area. So you have to put in your zip code and your household size and your tax status, etc. And then you can find out what you're eligible for. So just for an example here, I put in a household of $100,000, 3 people in Rockland, married filing jointly, $14,000 in upfront discounts. That's a 50% discount, $8,200 in tax credits. So the Inflation Reduction Act, the upfront rebates, will pay up to 100% for low-income people, and the 50% rebates are for anyone making up to 150% of the average median income. So you can check out the calculator, rewiringamerica.org. They're the one who did this calculator. This view is actually from our Sacramento CCL website. They have a new calculator on their site. You'll see if you go to Rewiring America, they'll tell you that the rebates aren't going to be available till 2025, which is true in most of the country, but it's not going to be true in California. We think we're going to get them before the end of the year. Benefits of going electric. We're going to have cleaner air in our homes and cities, increased efficiency. Like I said, heat pumps and induction stoves are much more efficient. Save money and get tax breaks. Even EVs, if you look at Consumer Reports and Car and Driver, they've both done some great articles about the cost effectiveness of driving an EV. So you may pay a little bit more upfront, but even in the first 3 years, Car and Driver did analysis, it's cheaper. You don't have all the oil changes, you don't have to pay for, expensive gas. They're fun to drive. Do something local. Okay, you guys are already doing this part of it because you are here in this group together. I tell people, if you're gonna do something personal, at some point you're gonna go, gosh, man, I'm not taking my plastic straw. I don't think that's gonna save the world. It's like, you just know it. It's like, okay, my one little effort is not saving the world. You're gonna get discouraged and you're gonna give up. When you do something local, you join a group, or you talk with other people, and then you know that other people are doing it too. You think, well, Linda, she's out there and she's doing it, and Pam, and all these people, Ken, they're all gonna be doing stuff, so you're gonna be like, well, if they're doing it, I can do it too. So I tell people, do something local. Join a group, you already done that. If you're interested in learning more and just staying involved in what we're doing, Citizens Climate Lobby, you can get on our mailing list. You'll know what's happening in our area and when we're contacting members of Congress. CCL makes it really easy to contact your members. They have a form on the website. They tell you, here's Kevin Kiley, and you just click the button, send it off. You can edit the letter if you want. Talking to other people is actually a climate solution. Catherine Hayhoe, my favorite climate scientist, she spends all of her time telling people, go talk about it. Because how can people think something's important if we don't talk about it? People are afraid to talk about climate change. It's because it's the most politically divisive topic in the United States. It's worse than gun control and abortion, which is hard to imagine, right? But that's what the studies say. And if you work someplace or you're part of an organization, maybe you can get them to make some changes. Like, I don't know, do they have bottled water here? Could they put in a water filling station or something? Anything like that, local. I like to volunteer with the Roseville Urban Forest Foundation, because then it's like, oh, there's something I did. There's a tree I planted. There's groups around here that do cleanup of the American River Parkway. So you're like, oh, good, I got rid of that plastic. Do something with national or international impact. This is because, just like I was saying, you're going to get discouraged. If you just do something personal, you're going to be like, this isn't doing anything. Individual efforts alone are not going to solve the problem. We have to have national legislation that makes it easy for everybody to do the things that we need to do. And you don't have to spend more, and you don't have to make choices, and it just makes everything go better. So, writing your member of Congress, which I'm sure you guys do because you're out here and being involved in politics. You can also vote, of course. I'm sure I don't have to encourage any of you guys to do that. Citizens Climate Lobby, we are partnering with an organization called the Environmental Voter Project. So if you're not tired of writing postcards for Indivisible and you have a real passion for the environment and climate, Environmental Voter Project, they identify people who are concerned about climate and environmental issues but are not good voters. And then they do phone calls and postcards, and they found that they can get the voting rate up about 1 to 1.5%. And these days, 1 to 1.5% in a swing state, That could change the election. So environmental voter project, good thing. Right to Congress and CEOs. I don't think I have to convince this group, but a lot of times I have to convince people that their voice matters. Like people I think are kind of getting the idea like, oh, my vote maybe matters because it's been really close the last few elections, so I'm gonna go vote. But then they're like, well, yeah, it doesn't matter if I write to my congressperson because they don't pay any attention. They're just all like paid off by the lobbyists. I'm like, that's exactly why you have to contact them. Because otherwise it's just the lobbyists they're talking to. I've been to Sacramento sitting in these meetings about legislation, and guess who's there? It's like the lobbyists and a few of us. We sit there for 3 hours to say, I am Lisa Howard from Citizens Climate Lobby, and I, am in favor of this bill. But there's not very many people doing that. Your vote and your voice matters. I don't think I have to convince you, but I hope you guys work on convincing your friends that the way to change is to actually voice your opinion. Don't just, put it on Facebook. Send your letter to your congressperson or to some CEO. If you don't like the fact that they're wrapping everything in 5 layers of plastic, it's like, why do you have to put the bananas in plastic? Write to somebody and tell them I don't like this. Vote with your wallet. It makes a difference. Do corporations really want your money? Of course they do. But look at how many more organic products and earth-friendly products we're seeing. Why is that happening? Because they want our money. And they see people are starting to go that way. And if you can't do anything else, I always say donate money. Like $5 a month. You can plant 5 trees with 1 tree planted, or 25 trees with Eden Reforestation. Both really good groups. You can donate to the Democratic Party. That's not a nonprofit, but they're working for us. So that is my plea to you. Join us. You don't have to have the solution. You just need to be part of the solution. Because if you think about what we were talking about at the very beginning, about this state and all the places we love, the people we love, the quality of life we want them to have, we can make a difference. We don't want those bad slides that I showed you. It's like, 54 days of 120 degrees. Like, who wants that? Nobody wants that. And I like to tell people, scientists, they can't predict the future. They don't have crystal balls. They have computers. They do calculations. But their calculation is, if we do this, then that will happen. If we do this, we are the variable they cannot control. We can change the future, and I hope you'll join me. Thank you.